All right, for our next part, we're going to have Bryce evaluate Kate's speech. Let me please welcome and let's give a round of applause for Bryce Adams and evaluating Kate.
Shane? Kate, as Shane discussed early on, you're moving right through your advanced manuals. You're doing a fantastic job. Every time you get up, you have a fantastic sort of motivational story to give, and this is no exception. Your speech was Bringing History to Life. The Story of My Life is the title of it. And first of all, when you came up here, you looked very comfortable. You looked confident. You started off with a great tone of voice that carried through the room. You looked like you had prepared this speech very, very well. And not to mention, again, also the fact that it was a pocket speech. And you found out an hour ago that you were going to be speaking. Fantastic job just on that front. You started off with hand gestures, saying like hear no, say no, see no, which is one of the objectives of the speech was how well were their gestures? Were they distracting? What was the vocal variety like? Your plot development, another area to focus on was the plot development, which I'll get through in just a second. Actually, when you're reading, one thing I learned at a TLI is a good way to read is to hold your paper here and have your hand follow the speech and where you're at. And it looked to me like that's what you were doing. You had this down here. You were making great eye contact. You had a great story to tell. And you were using your paper down here very effectively. So in terms of the character development part of the speech, you couldn't have picked a better story. I mean, Helen Keller, I'm sure most of us know who Helen Keller is, and she was just this dynamic, handicapped, blind girl that grew up with all kinds of struggles trying to learn and figure out who she was, and she fought through all that and became one of the most inspirational and important people of our time. And what a great story to choose from that. I mean, your descriptions were fantastic in the way that you read them. The invisible line stretched between myself and others. I mean, it just gave a kind of a cool concept of what her thoughts were. And the fact that she talked about, she went outside and she saw the sun and said, or felt the sun and said, is this what love is? You know, talking to her teacher and how she spelled things out in her hands were fantastic. Now, a couple of areas that could have made the speech even better, had you had more time to develop it, it probably would have been in your speeches. This was Helen Keller we're talking about, and she was so dramatic, and she was fighting and throwing things around. I remember watching a show about her when we were in school, and I mean, you could have acted that out up here, and you could have, talked about explaining, doing the letters in your hands or on the forehead, and how she went through some of these struggles, and it could have been a lot more, you could have added a lot of dynamics to it. But the gestures that you did have up here were very well done. At the beginning I was talking about how you were doing the hear no, see no, and they weren't distracting gestures at all. They were very well done. And so at the very end, you brought the entire speech to a climax and talked about how you think that you turned it into the story of your life, and how this was the story of your life is what I believed I heard at the end, and that was just fantastic. And great job. Thank you. 324. Thank you.
Very well done. Does that help at all? Is that easy to see? The timer thing?
I wasn't looking. When it dings, you can see it.